I'm here to just talk about VoiceThread, give a little bit of overview of it. And I decided to just do the presentation using VoiceThread. And hopefully we'll be able to have, can everyone hear me okay, first of all?
Yes, you're great.
Okay, great. Hopefully, we'll get some time to do a little interaction in it. Um, So I'm Ashlie Kauffman. I work at the School of Social Work. I'm the lead instructional designer there on the IDEA team. So the IDEA team stands for Instructional Design, E-Learning, and Assessments. And Clark, who's on the call, is the head of our team. So Clark, feel free to jump in anytime, please. Um, uh, Clark really, spearheaded our use of VoiceThread, and now definitely with, moving to all classes being, virtual, a lot more of our faculty are using it. And I wanted to say, it really can help address some of the, problems that you see in synchronous learning because it is totally asynchronous, which, I'll go over. But we are seeing our faculty kind of combining, not everyone, but combining, using VoiceThread as for lecture content and then also having synchronous office hours that anyone can drop in on. And I think that's, to me, it seems like a great way to kind of combine both so that students are still really getting that feel of having a lot of access to the professor and one another, as well as content that's delivered in a way that can really be adaptive to the schedule challenges that they're having now. I wanted to just give a quick overview on what VoiceThread is and why use it. And just if anyone, wants to chime in too, has anybody used VoiceThread? Um, I know, I think there was a presentation on it. I wasn't able to be there last time. Okay, thanks. Hannah said she has. Has anyone else used it in teaching? Okay, great. A couple of people. Okay, good. So yeah, feel free, to chime in with your, James extensively, feel free to chime in with your experiences. So it's basically a cloud-based application. Um, Mainly, we see the use of it for presentations. Um, oh, cute. Isabel said Jim called himself a VoiceThread junkie. Um, And also the benefit of it is that there can be interaction with it. So, and I mentioned it's fully asynchronous. So each thread, which is, whether that's a lecture or an activity, you can incorporate multiple types of media in it, which I find allows for a lot of great creativity. And so also it allows, to have face-to-face, so visual video, as well as audio or text engagement from students and the faculty member a, in a thread in a course that's online. So as I mentioned, it can be used creatively. I think it really is a good tool for addressing a lot of different instructional and learning needs. And now it's system-wide, so all UNMB users have VoiceThread accounts. And just to mention Clark, because we were using it so extensively, did a lot of advocacy just, I think, in the past week with the school. So suddenly it got rolled out really quickly. And, it's accessible from within all of the courses. Um, so yeah, so that's another reason to use it. So we have kind of a basic protocol that we've been using, and now, some things are just in terms of the way our process has been will change obviously because now faculty members all have their own accounts. But we have basically these guidelines of what would be ideal for us for using VoiceThread in the school, and it would be that lectures and presentations, one, if they're topical, um, rather than being particular to something that might only be going on in this one course at one period of time, they can be reused in multiple terms or classes. So for instance, a basic thing is that, we ask that there be no date specific cover slides. So like you'll notice the way I did this cover slide, there's nothing that mentions the name of the semester that we're in. This, therefore this can be used at any point, any time. Um, Master VoiceThread. So if a faculty member, gives us a PowerPoint presentation that they want to use for a lecture, uh, what we've been doing, and so now they would be doing this, is we're creating a master of that, so a master copy that we keep, and then they're recording their audio or video lecture on that, and then we duplicate it for each course. So we're making a copy so that, let's say there's somebody who's creating, Isabella, I see your question. I'll get to that in a little bit. If, for instance, somebody right now is creating a voice thread for, spring 2020, um, they'll record their lecture on it, and then we'll duplicate it and, give them a different voice thread, link to use in the course. And this is only if students are going to be commenting on it, if you want any student comments in that course. And then the master is used to copy subsequent terms so that every course has a unique voice thread for only those students to comment on, but that you're still keeping the content that you've spent all this time, developing and recording. We also provide students in the courses with an instructional voice thread so that they can experience what voice thread is while they're learning the technology. So that's one of those, meet them where they're at principles. Um, and and in consideration of that, knowing that online, hybrid, and face-to-face courses all have different needs in relation to using the technology. So for instance, in an online course, that instructional voice thread is going to be different than what it is in a hybrid course when students, so the instructional voice thread in an online course, and I'll demo it for you. I'll show you what one that we use looks like. That's one where we're allowing students to introduce themselves, or encouraging students to introduce themselves to one another using it. Um, and then the hybrid course wouldn't need that because they already know each other. They see each other, in a face-to-face environment. So, but that is an important point. Sometimes, now, for instance, students, a lot of students are getting used to this technology right now, but they're having to look at other materials that we have if a professor hasn't provided them with this kind of instructional voice thread for them to practice on. So, just remembering that students do also need to practice the technology is important if they're expected to use it. So just to go over some ways our faculty are using VoiceThread. So they're using it for lectures, as I mentioned, just with PowerPoint slides, Word documents for, explaining assignments, more specifically for going over the syllabus with students. They're also using it for video only lectures. So, perhaps, they're just going to deliver a, 15-minute or, longer lecture on a topic. And then students are, looking at the PowerPoint slides separately or looking at any other course notes or any material separately. We do have a faculty member, and there may be more than one now, who's using VoiceThread for just weekly updates and brief overviews to give to students. So every week, there's a 5-minute, 10-minute weekly update just to check in and really have that, kind of face-to-face contact. They're also using VoiceThread for student presentations, so group presentations. And, Clark may want to talk a little bit more about that, just the way we've set that up. And then also for class discussions on a topic. So we see a lot where faculty are using VoiceThread as a substitute for the discussion board. So maybe in an online course that has, 8 discussions, 4 or 5 weeks maybe using the actual discussion board, but there may be discussions that don't need to be as intense of responses, and that can, just be video or audio comments or text comments from students, um, rather than, the more detailed kind of discussions that you might get on the discussion board. Does anyone have any questions that I think I'm not seeing the chat, I'm just seeing them as they come up, but any questions on anything I've just said?
Yes, this is Henry Silverman. So I have tried to use VoiceThread in the past, and maybe my problem is that I've only used it as a uh, replacement for the usual discussion forum, and I don't know, maybe it's me, but I didn't have too much success with it. It didn't seem like um, uh, it seems like the students were using it as a discussion board, just writing and no voice, absolutely no videos. So I'm just wondering, what has been your experience with that?
I've seen, usually say like, you know, this one professor that I've worked with on this extensively, she had, last term, the students were all using video, no problem. And then this term, there have been more challenges with it. So sometimes she just encourages them, please use the video. It's really nice to see everyone's faces. And um, if they're comfortable. But it does seem to me that it's always whoever that first person is that posts, or the first couple of people, they kind of set the stage. So that, that might be, if the first couple of people are posting text comments, you might see all text comments from everyone else after that. And that might also be, part of just getting them used to doing the audio comments or video comments. So if there's somewhere you're requiring it, unless there's, reason why they can't, then, maybe um, it's more just setting the stage. But that does happen. Um, and it is harder, certainly to grade, I think, or to like evaluate the student responses in VoiceThread versus a discussion. So that's, why, there you want to kind of evaluate, is VoiceThread best for this as a discussion, or is, the discussion board best for it?
Yeah,
Um,
the other concern I have is that, well, just like when we're presenting, video, we want to get the script right. Uh, uh, I mean,
yeah.
sometimes we want to practice our ideas, blah, blah, blah. And with a written discussion board, I, uh, I'm thinking the advantage of that is that people could write down and then, before they post it, they could edit it, blah, blah, blah. It just seems like there's a lot of more work involved in doing a video.
Right. And that really is something that I think, maybe some modeling for students, that it's okay to make mistakes and have the dog barking and, a variety of those things when using VoiceThread, because the point of it is really, with the video, is to give a quicker response as well, and a more impromptu response, that maybe isn't quite as, edited. Um, so it really is just like, encouraging students to, let go of that, kind of editor in their head while they're using it a little bit. But yeah, I totally understand, those concerns as well. I'm gonna move ahead just really quickly. So some other ideas for using VoiceThread, for, one-to-one or group peer feedback on an assignment draft, I think is good. Students, now that students have accounts, they can do some kind of peer feedback with one another, using this. For group critiques of any kind of reading, or group annotations of any kind of reading, um, and, a lot of other ideas, and definitely, if you guys have other ideas, I'd love to hear that. Has anyone been using VoiceThread in a different way besides just as a presentation tool? Any thoughts? Okay, so Hannah said, she's used it as a feedback tool before. Yeah, I think like it's great certainly for feedback. And really the benefit in a presentation, even of allowing for student comments on it is that you can get student questions and comments where they're having those questions in the presentations. They can, comment on any slide of the VoiceThread. Like here, you could, if you have a question, you could leave a comment on the VoiceThread, for me here, and I would know exactly the page that, you were having any kind of trouble with. I wanted to say a quick word about accessibility with VoiceThread. I think about a month ago, time has all blurred together. I participated in a webinar that they had about accessibility just to learn a little bit more about it. And it is set up, pretty easily for screen readers. I'll just click right here, voicethread.com universal. This is their site that I can go to my voice threads through here. I can create a voice thread through here. So this is kind of I guess it's like a text to speech site that they use, which is, pretty great. You can edit captions. Students can change their language preferences. And this is kind of to Harry's point, people who have any kind of anxiety, you can re-record your comments. You can replay comments, I think was a really good point from this webinar, that in a webinar, if you miss something that said, you can't replay it, but you can replay, these recordings in VoiceThread, which is, definitely a great benefit for, anyone. Just to strengthen learning a little bit there. There's a lot more about accessibility, but sorry, I just wanted to hit a couple of, main points, but I'm happy to share my other notes from that. Yeah, so Kevin asked, is closed captioning possible in the campus-wide version? I'm assuming that it is because that's it's like the platinum service. So Clark, you may want to mention if you know anything about that. But I think that with the enterprise version that it is available.
This is Jim. We were working on this the other day because we're also using this tool in the grid for student presentations. And it appears the closed captioning doesn't capture voice and caption it. It appears that the closed captioning has to have text entered into it. Unless I'm seeing Clark talk about the third-party service.
It does. As far as I know, it does capture voice from from my notes, but you definitely have to edit them. The demo that I saw, you just have to make sure that there's like a lot of enunciation, no echo, accents affect captioning. I'm not sure if Clark's mentioning anything else about that in the chat. Look at that chat quickly.
Hey, Ashley, and everybody. I'll just mention about the closed captioning that, well, first of all, the enterprise license we just kind of came into like yesterday, so it's still pretty fresh and we're still exploring and figuring out what.
And thank you for pulling that horse, Clark. It's appreciated.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And in terms of closed captioning, so the automated closed captioning where you could leave a comment and then it would actually just, the captions would be generated. I thought that was maybe a feature of the enterprise version, but what I'm learning, what I think I'm learning, like I said, it's still brand new, is that you actually need a third-party provider to do that. So it has an API for a third-party provider, so that if you have a subscription to 3Play Media, like I know a few of you do, you can actually connect it to closed caption voice threads. I thought it was going to be automatic, so I was a little bit surprised by that. But you can upload a file for closed captioning as well. The problem with that is that it's a very particular type of file that has to have time code built in with it. The good news about that is that YouTube generates that type of file. So if you, it's kind of a juggle, but you can upload something to YouTube and then download that file and then bring it up and upload it to VoiceThread, but it's quite a process. So I'll leave it back to you, Ashlie. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you for chiming in. Okay, hold on. So I just some really quick examples. I'll just show one of these super quickly. This is one of our faculty members, Paul Mulhern. So he's, been really generous with sharing his voice threads with others now that we're, all going online. But, just to show you some of the ways content can be incorporated into VoiceThread. So, he's lecturing on each slide. He normally in a classroom would have would show this as a video. In VoiceThread, you can embed the video itself. So this will just play. If a student presses play, it's already full screen. I really like that feature of it. So he's done that throughout here, where you're getting the media really easily. So rather than having students look at a PowerPoint, then having to click on a media link separately, they're getting it all right here. And then I'll show you really quickly. So and this is where another, faculty member. So this is the more kind of traditional. Hello, everyone. On the slide, they play automatically. This is the master copy, but like here, for instance, she's asking a question of students then all answer, right here. So that's what I was mentioning about how it's really, really a good tool for, keeping the conversation on point at the moment when you're talking about a topic. So back to mine. So this is actually one of the introduction voice threads that we use. So for an online course, we embed this in the course in week 1 when students are expected to do VoiceThread, and I'm kind of talking and explaining about what VoiceThread is. We're going through, how do you get started, register, come back and view this VoiceThread. There's different, information here. And also just really quick, I know Clark would want me to shout this out. So you can insert a link here and the link is over here where students can click on that and it takes them right to the page. And then, here's instruction on adding comments. So I'm talking students through how to add comments. If I were to play this, you'd also see some animation where I've selected one of these pencil colors and I'm drawing and highlighting on the screen, giving a little short summary. And then on the next slide, this is for a particular class. And this slide, we've been swapping out for different classes. So however the professor wants students to introduce themselves, we're giving them the parameters. And then on the next slide, they all introduce themselves. And so you'll see all the comments with all the students' initials and video, of all of them, or audio or text, should they choose to do that, talking. So that's kind of our basic introduction. And then obviously, if this is used in a hybrid course, we don't have this, where, we may have a student comment on something else or just practice doing a comment, but they don't need to introduce themselves. I did want to, I need to take a sip of water. Sorry. I did want to mention just briefly something I've been thinking about in terms of the difference really with, face-to-face courses and hybrid and online instruction. When faculty members are using VoiceThread in like a hybrid course, for instance, differently than an online course, if you're using your lectures in VoiceThread lectures and putting them online, it's almost like setting up a kind of flipped classroom instructional environment, so that you want to really be considering what you're using different teaching modalities for. So you might be using VoiceThread for these lectures online, but then you wouldn't also just be lecturing regularly in a classroom, from the podium, in the same course. I mean, just in terms of thinking about how you're differentiating instruction for students, and I think to recognize that the classroom can then be used for something else if the lectures are online, and VoiceThread therefore is a good tool to use that. I don't know what some people might kind of think about that, or if those of you who've used VoiceThread, if you found that then it like frees up your if anyone's doing hybrid, if it frees up any in-person teaching to be used in other ways. Is anyone here teaching hybrid courses or was teaching hybrid? We're all online.
I was. It's Jim.
Yeah. What was yeah, I don't know, just what are your thoughts about that in terms of different modalities for
Well, the primary way that I've been using it so far is that sort of weekly summary and preview. So we have a module where the courses are 8 weeks long, and we had an in-person class before the world fell apart, and then 2 weeks online, and then an in-person class and 2 weeks online, so on and so forth. So in the online weeks, at the beginning of each week, I would sort of go, okay, and talk about what they did and general comments and how the work was, and then I give them a preview of, okay, so when you're doing the assignments for this week, pay special attention here, 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 and there. I mentioned a minute ago, we also, I work partly in the folks at the grid over on Poppleton. And we're going to be using this for our grid pitch presentation. So we'll have a whole bunch of different experiences there to talk about in the next month or so.
Great. Yeah, I laughed internally when you said when the whole world fell apart, because it does kind of feel like that. Yeah, does anyone else have any other just questions about this in general? I mean, just a quick, I think VoiceThread is definitely really great. Like our students, we've gotten really good feedback, that professors have shared with me about it, just in terms of how much, the online students have enjoyed that, because it really allows them to see one another's faces, even in a totally asynchronous environment, and get to know one another a little better. If they haven't, been in a class with, a peer before. But they're really enjoying that, and they're getting to know their professors better, because of that as well. It's definitely a better delivery, just in terms of file size, than having students download PowerPoints with really large audio files attached to them or video files attached. So we see a lot of benefit from it.